Yeah, I'm gonna get mad for sure. Even the little struggles, like we've been over this. You all know Geoff doesn't do well with tools and putting things, and I get mad at them. Sometimes I throw them. Stacy will have to be like, "This looks dented or scratched. It came that way. I don't know what you're talking about." Um, I know, I'm awful. But we all face these different types of struggles, right? Different things, big, small, anywhere in the middle. We face struggles, and we all have different responses. And that's kind of where we're going to head today is the responses. They may be these. They may be completely off book. These we went with mostly because to some degree these are going to tie into Exodus today. But absolutely some of the other ones you brought up are totally ways that we respond. The Israelites and Moses today in our section of Exodus are going to struggle. Now, their struggles may be different than what we face today. What they went through is very different, but we're going to learn from the response. That's what we're going to get today. The response of that and kind of how God is still present through the struggles, right? No matter what the struggle is, God's presence is still with us. It was still with the Israelites. That's what we're going to look at today. So kind of the punchline today is when the struggle feels real, feel the real presence of God. So when the struggle feels real, and it will, and it hurts, and it sucks, and all this kind of stuff, feel the real presence of God. Now, if you haven't been with us, totally okay, you need a refresher. I'm going to walk us through briefly where we've been in Exodus to catch us up today. So we have the Israelites, God's people. They are held captive in Egypt by Pharaoh. So then God calls Moses through the great story of the burning bush to say, hey, Moses, you're going to be the guy that's going to lead my people out of slavery and out of Egypt. So Moses and his brother Aaron, who's also part of this now, go to Pharaoh, and shocker, Pharaoh, the big king, very full of himself, very powerful, says, no, I'm not letting them go. So God sends multiple plagues, 10 in total, to show Pharaoh he means business, and also to show the Israelites, hey, I got your back. I'm going to protect you. So finally, after the last plague, which is the plague of the firstborn, Pharaoh lets them leave. So they get to go. Then last week, as they're out and God's leading, and we talked about they don't go on this direct path. They kind of go down and under. And eventually they seem kind of trapped because we have the Red Sea there. And then again, in kind of one of the more famous stories of the Bible and the backdrop of our thing here, God parts the Red Sea. The Israelites can walk through. Pharaoh's army is all washed out. And God's people praise him. They say, yay, God, you did it. Thank you. We're great. We're safe, right? And they're just going to praise God and be super joyous and happy forever, right? Wrong. We get like this too because the struggles set in and then they react. So that's where we're going to be today. So we're going to start with Exodus chapter 16. It's marked in your Bibles on the table if you want to follow along that way. It will be all up here behind me as well if you'd like to just look at it there. So we're going to start. Their first struggle will be a struggle for food. Exodus 16, verses 1 through 3. It says this. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim, came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they'd come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you've brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. All right, we'll stop there for a second. The Israelites start by grumbling. They grumble, they complain. And they're in the desert, and it's about food. It's like they've already forgotten how bad slavery was. I don't think the timeline was that much from where they just got out. So they've already forgotten, and they're remembering back to Egypt, all the good stuff, right? The food. They had meat to eat back in Egypt. Now, getting meat as a slave was not super common. They wouldn't have gotten a lot, but they at least had some. It's like they're remembering the smells and the aura, right? Like if you remember sitting around that Thanksgiving table and what it smells like and it feels like to be there. That's what they're remembering. And they're hungry, so it's hard. This is a legitimate struggle that they're facing, but it's how they respond. They complain to Moses and Aaron. They put blame. This is Moses and Aaron's fault. It's on you guys. You led us here, and the prospect for food here is not good. Now, if God would have just killed us back in Egypt, hey, we would have died with a full stomach. That would have been better, right? They've already forgotten that God saved them from slavery. God saved them from the army of Pharaoh. They're just thinking, we'll die. We're going to die hungry, so they grumble and complain about it. God responds with his presence. Let's keep going. This is Exodus. We're going to jump a little bit. Exodus 16, verses 9 through 20. Then Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in a cloud. The Lord said to Moses, I've heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you'll be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening quail came and covered the camp. In the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they didn't know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. When they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. We'll stop there. Sounds like teaching. So you tell them something, they don't listen, and you get angry with them. Fair. And blame you. See, now maybe I should have taken this in a different direction now that I'm hearing from my teachers in the room. This will apply, don't worry. God hears the grumbles of the people. He hears everything. Here's the first thing. For him to hear it means his presence is there with them in the desert. It's very real. He's right there. So God makes a promise via Moses. There's going to be meat and bread. So the meat is the quail. This comes at night. And this is great, right? Here's the meat. Cool, we got it. Then the next morning it says there's this dew that clears on the ground, and there's just something on the ground. And they don't really know what it is. Now, we know it to be called manna, but the people are like, we don't know what this is. It may have, they said, looked like, in both size and shape, like little scales on the ground, in size, shape, and color. But this was their bread. And it had to have been nutritious enough to sustain the people, because God's giving it as their bread, but it came with instruction. And the instructions are important. God says, gather only what was needed for that day alone. So you're going to have to gather every day. No weekly grocery shopping or meal planning ahead, every day. And they say measure it out, the omer. That's just a unit of measurement in that time. And it's going to be enough for the family for each day. And then consume it all, right? No portions here, just eat it all. Eat it all. Don't save any. Why? Because God's going to show that he will provide and his presence is there each and every day. God is there every single morning. And this is working, but some, as we do, don't really listen, don't really pay attention, and try to keep some for morning. Moses is angry with them. And he's like, I got to see him being like, see, we told you this was going to happen. Now that food's inedible. There's maggots all over it. It's terrible. You should have eaten everything. But the point is the Israelites had a struggle. They grumbled about it. They complained. We like to complain sometimes. I like to complain, right? It's fun. Social media, for those of you that are on it, is full of complaining, right? Because you can just complain all over the place. Here is something people are complaining about. Not me, but many are. We have a new celebrity relationship. I'm sure most of you don't care, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Taylor Swift, we all know I love it. I'm a Swiftie. And Travis Kelce, who plays professional football. They started dating. Here's what happens now. She is going to a lot of his football games, right? Supportive girlfriend. This is great. She's doing a good thing. Naturally, the camera goes up to the press box or the booth she's sitting in to show her all the time. Why? Because she's marketable. You got a new audience. The diehard football fans don't like this. They're like, I just want to watch my football game. I don't need to see her all the time. So they get on the Twitter and all these other things, and they rage about it. Okay, I have read it all, and I think it's hilarious. Right? And they're like, this isn't even real. She's just getting paid. It's a fake relationship. Not at all. This is real. I love love. These kids are falling head over heels for each other. It's great. But they're annoyed. People are annoyed by this, so they complain. We do this. Maybe you're not annoyed by this. Maybe you are. But we complain about things sometimes. Struggles that make us grumble, and that's what I want to talk about. What do we do when there are these struggles that kind of make us want to complain? And I'm not going to focus on the struggles themselves because we all have very different struggles depending on our lives, our context, what we do. But I want to talk about the response. And for our purposes, for this section, these aren't like the massive struggles, but they're more the inconvenient and annoying things that just kind of get you. They're enough to make you maybe start pointing fingers to put a little blame, like, you did this. And maybe that finger starts to go up like, God, what are you doing? That's what's going on. Blaming others, maybe blaming God a bit. This is what the Israelites did. They were nervous about food, excuse me, and annoyed that they didn't have what they needed to eat or had what they did in Egypt, so they complain. So do you complain? There's a place for venting and expressing anger and complaining and all that. That's important. But now if you're just going to keep going, you can't let it go and just go and go. Now to some level, we all fall into this a little bit. I almost describe it as like, do you just kind of get overly cranky? I don't have a better word other than cranky right now. That's the one. Maybe it's even unintentional. So what happens and what's driving behind that? Sometimes what I've found, and I can just share my experience here, is that I'm not really connected with God's presence during this time. I'm not really consistently feeling him around when I'm getting kind of just easily cranky. Because I realize the crankiness isn't always about whatever I think is actually making me cranky, if that makes sense. It's not really about that. It's my disconnect from God. Like when I get like this, Stacey will sometimes ask me, she'll be like, you doing your quiet times every day? And I'll be like, don't ask me that because I don't want to answer it. Because I know. Because many times the answer is not consistently. And that's the reminder that I need God's presence every day, that you need God's presence every day. The Israelites needed it every day because he provided the manna every day. He provided the manna and the food for them, but for us, he can provide peace and joy and comfort every day. So when we're cranky or we're grumbling or we're complaining or you're annoyed with what you see on TV, we just need a little peace. Just take a breath. Take that breath with God. Take that time with God, even if it's just a little bit. Because that little bit will go a long way. And you can do that every day at any time because God's presence is very real every day. So that's kind of on those little struggles, those little grumbles. Well, it's going to level up a little bit for the Israelites. They have another struggle coming. They handle this one a little differently. Let's keep going. This will be Exodus 17, verses 1 through 3. It says, the whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? We're going to stop there. So they've been traveling, and there's no water. This one's more serious. Okay, because without the water, traveling through the desert, this can be serious. So they're logically frustrated about this one. So they argue with Moses about it. And if you get into the wording as I was studying it, what they would have done here wasn't just be mad. They would have brought what amounts to a legal accusation against Moses. This is the wording that would have been used. Against Moses and kind of against God. Think of it as if they blame Moses for not having any water and they take him to court over it. That's in essence what they're doing here. And Moses is like, guys, by doing this, you're putting God to the test. This is not a good thing. In essence, they're trying to coerce God into responding and showing what he can do. They had this faith and praise of God that we talked about last week. That's no longer just there. Now it is contingent on God responding to this test. It's not just there because of what he's done. Now he's got to show them again. And they're mad, so they challenge Moses and they challenge God. Not surprisingly, God shows up again. God's presence in Exodus 17, verses 4 through 7. Moses cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me. The Lord answered Moses, go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and the water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? We'll stop there. Moses says the people are about ready to stone him. For the Israelites, this is the last step of rejection for a leader, right? This is, you're done. There's more than just a vote of no confidence. This is, we're ready to stone you, kill you. We are mad, and we're ready to strike. So God tells Moses, take your staff, very famous staff in this book, and go to the rock and hit it. God's going to be at the rock, Moses, and some elders. So God is once again present. We're not totally sure why he says to take the elders. It may have something to do with the accusation, kind of the courtroom idea. Elders in the society may have heard some accusations, so maybe they're there to kind of take it in and see the proof that's going to happen. So Moses strikes the rock. Water gushes out. God does it again. Now, we know to expect this, but the Israelites weren't so sure. So God nicknames the rock two different things. And they're both focused on behavior and attitude of the Israelites. In essence, to say, you guys you quarreled. You didn't have faith about this. Because they had said, is God among us? Like they had the audacity to ask that question. The same God that led them out of Egypt. Same God that provided food. But this struggle was so big, so strong that they were ready to fight about it and say, prove yourself. To prove this is the best. Right? When we think something is the best, sometimes we get ready to fight about it. It is trunk or treat today. It is Halloween season. There is candy galore. I am a staunch believer in candy, and the best candy being on the table is the Kit Kat. Now, I polled some people, one of them being my sister-in-law back here, Who said it is Reese's? It is not clearly Reese's. Reese's is an inferior candy. I have the microphone, so I can drown her out. Reese's is inferior to Kit Kat. Inferior to Kit Kats, yes. Inferior. Why would I want to just chew through some peanut butter? I just put it on toast when I can have a nice wafery chocolate bar in my Kit Kat. Oh, it doesn't melt in your mouth. You have to chew it anyway. It needs a crispy outside, see? So we're going to go. Oh, no. This is terrible. You can all decide for yourselves. You have them on your tables. You can eat them and decide. But see, Lindsay and I are going to go to battle. If it's in the text message, Lindsay's like, I'll gladly tell you you're wrong. I'm like, well, what are sister-in-laws for other than to tell you you're wrong? So we would go to battle on this. So feel free to eat them. You decide for yourselves. You have a quarrel. Okay, we're going to use a biblical term. Great. We're going to quarrel. Feel free to try them. You can be Team Lindsay, Team Geoff, or think something else is different and even better, but that's fine. But the fact is sometimes things get us so big, so riled up, that you want to fight about it, or you get so mad and you want to challenge something. Maybe there are things that make us want to challenge God. These are the big challenges, the ones that make us say, oh yeah, God, show it. Show me. The Israelites had no water. The Israelites thought they were going to die. I have more Reese's and Kit Kats over here for later, so feel free. They thought they were going to die. They brought a courtroom fight to Moses and God. So think about these things for you. And again, we all may have different ones. That thing that maybe you didn't deserve to have happen to you, you didn't cause, but it affects you in a huge way. And it's not good. And it hurts, and it makes you mad, and all these kind of things. What do you do with the anger? Do you ever challenge God or try to put him to the test? Do this, God. Show me you're that God you claim to be in this situation. Show me you're actually here and that you care. And I understand this anger that we can feel. The questioning, God, I get it. I want to give you two things to maybe remember when we get into that mode. And I know this is not easy to do, but let's talk about them anyway. The first one. I guess there are two things to remember about God's presence always being there. The first one being he willingly sent his son to the cross to die for us. God did that so that we could be with him. So why would he walk away from you now? Like, is there a bigger test than that? God wants us to be with him. The way to do it is to send his son to die and to rise again. So he does it. He already did that. So why would he not be present for us now if he already did that? He is going to stay present. He won't leave. And the second one is that God also, I think God hurts with us, and he doesn't want us to hurt. Psalm 103:13 says, as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. He has compassion and empathy with us when we hurt. He's not a cold and distant God that doesn't care when we hurt. He's right there with you in the hurt. His presence doesn't go away. God doesn't want you to hurt or be mad. He's not happy when you are, and he definitely doesn't go away. He's there for you even if you're ready to leave. He's not ready to leave. So we have these different struggles, and we don't even bring them on ourselves, but they can lead us to complaining. They can lead us to challenging and getting mad with God, right? We've had those two. But there's a third challenge, a third struggle that comes up, and this one comes up more from Moses. And this one's a little different. We're going to read about this one now. And this one is more brought on by ourselves. Exodus, we're going to jump to chapter 18, verses 13 through 16. The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people. And they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it's brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and God's instructions." We'll stop there. This is a little different type of struggle. This is focused on Moses now. We've mostly been hearing struggles of just the people he's leading. Now it's a little bit on him. And the fact is he's doing too much. He's been judging and mediating and solving problems for all the people, all of them. When anybody comes with an issue with each other or that they need to figure out, they came to him, to Moses. And Jethro, his father-in-law, kind of calls him out. He's like, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing all this? And Moses is like, well, I'm seeking God on behalf of the people, God's decision on the matter. I'm the one that's supposed to make God's laws known to the people, to be the teacher and the decision maker and all this kind of stuff. But it's a lot, and it's going to eventually wear on him. So Jethro gives him some advice. Exodus 18:17 through 23. Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you're doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representatives before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you'll be able to stand the strain. All these people will go home satisfied." We'll stop there. Jethro's like, this isn't good for you. It's not good for you, Moses. You're doing too much. Or for the people, because all these people are standing around waiting to get heard by Moses. So not as many are getting helped. What's important here is Jethro, with the advice, he doesn't invalidate what Moses is doing. He knows it's important, but he says it's just too much. So he offers advice. We all love advice from our in-laws, right? My mother-in-law is here today. She knows how much I love that. She's giving me a look. I might hear about that one later. That's okay. But his advice is actually really good. He says divide the labor. Delegate some of the responsibility. And this isn't just for anybody. He's like, no, you don't just give it away willy-nilly. He's like, these should be people that are worthy, capable, trustworthy. The people that Moses chooses should be very morally upright. Not so much academic or socially standing is what matters. It's their moral standing. Because these people are going to be judges and deciders over different groups of people. We see this kind of in society today, right? Some people lead over small groups, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and it kind of branches out. The toughest matters will still get kicked to Moses. Moses is not out of it completely. He's still doing it. He's still very much involved. And this only happens with God's total okay. God has to be present in this. And I believe he is. I believe Jethro has God speaking through him in this. So both Moses and the people can have their struggles and their issues handled. But it starts because Moses has taken on too much. He's trying to do too much, and he just doesn't realize it. Has anybody ever seen like a one-man band perform? Anybody kind of see? Yeah, right? These are really cool. I could never do it, but one-man bands do, right, is this one person, and they play multiple instruments, right? Like, there's this guy here. He's got a bunch strapped on. Sometimes you'll have your guitar on and a microphone. There'll be a harmonica, and you're kicking drums with your feet and all this kind of other stuff. And it's impressive. It's fun. You have all the control. But sometimes you need a band. Sometimes you need somebody else playing bass, somebody else playing guitar, somebody else playing drums, because you're doing too much, and that is a struggle. Moses was handling everyone's issues and problems with each other. He was being the one-man band of this, and he didn't realize it, but it was too much, and it was hurting him and the people. And it took his father-in-law to help him see this, saying, overworking and doing it all, it can seem really noble, and that's what's hard about it. It can seem noble. Be like, I care, I work, I'm dedicated. And that can be true, but overworking and overdoing it can also be very harmful. And this isn't just work-related. This is not just overworking at your job. This is at home with family stuff, with whatever you're doing. Different jobs, different roles, and the context have different time requirements. So take it again for what your own situation is. But think about if you're doing too much. And so often we don't see this for ourselves. We don't always see it for ourselves. Jethro had to see it for Moses. We may need somebody else to say, hey, you're doing too much. Are you doing too much? Slow it up. And God can absolutely show his presence through these people. I absolutely believe God was behind Jethro talking to Moses. Jethro's words were like, hey, if it's okay with God. So he knows God has to be behind this as well. God was present. So then Moses was able to share the load. We see this in Acts 6. We talked about Acts last year. The apostles are teaching the word and everything, and some other things were getting neglected, the distribution of food. So they set some other people in place to handle that because they didn't have to do it all. It's better for you sometimes to not do it all. You can rest, recharge, not get burned out, and focus on the things you really need to. The thing that God really needs you to focus on, which a lot of times is him. Keep your focus on God. You're not impressing God by doing more stuff. You might just be stressing your relationship with him. That's also better for those around you. When Moses stops doing too much and kind of delegate some of this off, the Israelites get more matters handled and get it handled more quickly. More people get help. Maybe it's not directly by you, but the fact is, more people benefit. Your other relationships might be better too because you have the time to have in them. You're not exhausted or stressed all the time. There are responsibilities and things in life that need to be yours and yours alone, but not all of them. Talk to God about those. Let his presence be on you. Let his presence be in those responsibilities. Listen to those around you. Let there be a Jethro in your life to say, this isn't good. This is too much. Because doing too much is a struggle that we may not always realize, but God's presence can absolutely help us with it. Struggles happen, a variety of types. We went over a few different ones today. What matters is how we respond. So think about if you start to grumble or complain and you feel yourself doing that, you hear yourself doing that. Focus on reconnecting with God's presence. When you want to challenge God, almost get into that fight, remember what he's already done and what he's doing, that he's already faced the biggest test in sending his son to die for us, and that he also doesn't want you to hurt or be angry. And then if you're doing too much, remember you're not impressing God by doing too much. He just wants time with you. He doesn't want your relationship with him stressed. He doesn't want any other relationship stressed. So these struggles, they will happen for us, and these struggles are very real for all of us. But always remember to feel the real presence of God in them. Let's pray. God, I thank you for today. God, I thank you for this section that even though it was hard for the Israelites, it was hard for Moses, that you showed your presence through all these struggles. And God, I thank you that in our struggles, you're always present. You never let us down. You're never not there. So I pray that when any of these struggles, big, small, whatever they are in life, God, pop up for us, we would look to you first. We would remind ourselves of your presence. We'd remind ourselves that you don't want us to hurt. We remind ourselves of what you've already done for us. So I thank you again that your presence is real and that your presence is here every day. In your name.